And presented the notes from last time. And seems like we had a huge conversation last time. I took a lot of notes and, kind of like how the resimulation was triggered last time from AMD's perspective and how they were doing it, and not necessarily that everyone has to do it the same way. Um, and then we started talking at the end more about like, we still need to kind of figure out how the control plane and the data plane and the packet format, like how we're going to do this and define the control channel. And so I thought maybe we could pick up there, or if anyone had a PR or work item they wanted to talk about first. Let me see if Gohan is joined also. Oh, he is here. Hi, Gohan.
Hey, hi, Joy. Yeah, hey.
Hi there. Hi. Yeah. So, anything in particular you want to start with this week, Gohan? Like maybe definition, like we know we have to work on defining the control channel, and we need to work on the protocol used to sync between the DPUs and what it's going to look like. So,
Oh, okay. I think I think last week maybe Marian says he would review those updated HLD, right? So, and provide feedback if there's any. I wonder, since we talk a lot about it last time on that MetaData, I mean, wonder if Marian look at other updates and have any comments.
okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't look at the metadata. I only looked at the side APIs.
Yeah.
So
So
was
we
there,
don't.
maybe I missed something, was there a proposal for standardized metadata?
No, not yet, right? So I saw the last time they added a bunch of updates on the proposal, the spec.
Yeah, right.
AMD team. Yeah. So Sanjay or Vijay, did you add to the proposal?
Whatever was added, then Christina.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are no new updates. But I think I'm not clear. Was the agreement that we would put the metadata format? Because that I don't know if we can put that, right? That doesn't seem like there is. I think what we had agreed before when before I updated the thing was we will call out what are the things that need to be there in the metadata. The reason is the way we communicate the metadata. We cannot have a lot of processing on the standby side before we insert the flow, right? Otherwise, we will not be able to keep up with the CPS numbers that we want, right? Because it's a combination of processing on the active, processing on the standby. So we can't send it in some other format, have a lot of processing done on the standby, and then insert the flow when we sync up our this thing. So we have a lot of optimizations where the metadata itself is very implementation specific, right? And we keep changing. We could keep changing that too. So I don't know if it's a reasonable thing for us to put forth whatever exact packet format we send across, etc., because it won't make sense. It's very implementation specific, very table specific, how the way we have laid it out, right? But I think the general in the proposal, this thing says what are the things that you need to the implementation needs to carry. Now, how each implementation encodes it is up to the implementation. What do we if each implementation is going to have its own optimized format, what would be the purpose in laying out what the exact packet format is? Because the way the tables are laid out, the way the data structures are laid out may be very different from implementation to implementation. In our view, it does not. I think this is a critical path, right? Each flow entry when we are creating, when we are inserting, is a very critical path. We should be driving for the best optimization we can, unless we are okay with a much lower CPS number, right? Since this thing is a high CPS number, we are at the edge of, from our experience, right? We are at the edge of performance, right? We have pushed it to the way extent we can to get whatever CPS numbers that we are getting today. And making it suboptimal by adding layers of processing, I think will cut down the numbers quite significantly. So the proposal list of
Sanjay,
what needs to be there.
yeah,
Yeah,
I have
go
a
on.
quick question. Yes, sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
A quick question on this metadata, right?
Mhm.
So when we do this flow sync, do we carry any metadata in the flow sync?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so then flow sync is basically done through control channel, right? Through control plane.
For the bulk sync, for the
Yes.
incremental sync, it will go through the data path because we
Right.
can't come to the
Right.
control. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Agree. So hence, if that is the case, and if our objective is to, we discussed for HA, we want to have at least the control channel or the control plane to be interoperable, multiple vendors, right? And if that is the goal, and we leave the data plane to be, perhaps be interoperable at a later point, but initially to start with, the control channel is mandatory to be interoperable, then in that case, I believe the metadata should be standard, right? So whatever is need to be used, we should define it, and we should agree on on the format of it.
I see.
Would
One
you agree?
question, though, Hanif, would you, when we say control plane is compatible with not the data plane, I didn't get the. So if you had a active standby pair, are you saying that that active standby pair would be two different vendors?
No, I think it was basically priority point of view to start with, right? To start with, we said, okay, we may basically come up and say, okay, fine, our data plane should also interoperable at a later point, but at least to start with, our control channel where we do this perfect sync, it should be interoperable. That was the goal. I thought, Gerald also set, and we kind of agreed on that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the piece that would be. I agree with that goal. And whether we can achieve it or not, I don't know, but that should be the goal, that the control plane could be interoperable. But the data plane, I think, is going to be really tough in the beginning, so we can leave it for maybe a little bit later. But we should explore that. And if that's not accomplishable, I think we do that by focusing on the control plane and seeing how far we can go with that.
Yes, and the data plane also can be talked about here, and most of it can be made interoperable, minus the opaque portion that is left to each vendor. Yeah,
I actually agree with that too. The opaque
that
stuff
is I think the opaque stuff is the actual what we insert in the flow in whatever is there in the proposal. The rest is in the open. I mean, whatever is implementation specific is what we thought was opaque.
So
yeah, or I would. Sorry,
Sandy, I think Hanif has a good point. Right? I just look at the the update this PR 244, right? So in the side header, this flow sync messages, which is used for the control plane. I think the metadata somehow is still opaque data, right? So if we want to achieve this control plane syncable, then we need to define more detail on that meta, right? Basically, I raise a question on your PR 244 asking what is the format of the metadata, right? So can we?
So this is what I was saying. The format of the metadata itself today, we think the way we have been able to get whatever performance we could get is it is very, very implementation specific, right? It is because we don't want to get some at least in our experience, getting some abstract data and then converting it to what we want to do to push was affecting our performance.
That's a data plane, right? So, but not this is about the control plane sync, right? So
it's very similar, right? Whatever we sent, even in the data plane sync, when we sync a flow, a new flow, right? It carries the same metadata across to the other side because that is how we insert the flow, right? Even whether we carry it, the metadata itself is the same whether we carry it in the control plane or we carry it in the data plane. But think of it this way, right? Or how do I say it? Let's say we are
No,
inserting.
no, I get that part,
yeah.
but I think, you know, because the control plane is, you know, there's a CPU involved, right? So, you know, why can't we just define some standard, the metadata and, you know, do a simple, if we need to insert the hardware, you make simple translation, right? So,
I think what I'm hearing is you can have a control plane that's interoperable, but within that control plane, the connection update, it is still a connection update, may still require opaque data, which is specific to the hardware. I think that's what I'm hearing. So the bulk of it could be interoperable, but I think what I'm hearing is you can't get around the fact that you'll still need to send opaque data, which is specific to their hardware.
Exactly. So if you look at the flow sync message
no,
itself,
you
are
know,
right.
can you explain that, you know, in the bulk sync, what is the connection between the CPS and the bulk sync? Why this bulk sync metadata, you know, some
Bulk sync
additional,
is still
yeah.
updating connection table, right? The same way as a dynamic connection update would occur. You're
But
doing the same thing.
but
It's
it's
just that
not
you're
the CPS, right? So CPS is, you know, there's an incoming packet coming. So how is it related to the CPS? Because
because
we're
that's
updating.
updating.
No,
You're
we're
updating
updating the.
the
No, no.
state
Here,
of a connection.
hold on, right? So
Yeah, but it's not real time.
this is before the switchover. They just do a sync, right? So I mean,
It's
on the
still affecting
on
the
the
connection table, though. That's all it does in the end. You have a connection table, and those updates are affecting that connection, a connection in a connection table. It's updating it. In
no
a bulk sync,
CPS.
you're
Sorry, CPS specifically is about the sync package,
we're
right?
not
When the
talking
create
we're not
create.
yeah, we're not talking about CPS. We're talking about the communications channel. It's associated with how CPS, but it's not CPS. You are creating a connection on the other device, the same one that you have. You're creating a connection, and then subsequent messages are updating that connection. That's what you're doing. The faster you can do that, of course, you get better CPS. But we're not talking about CPS. We're talking about the update of a connection in a connection table. That's what that DP sync channel is doing.
No,
And
but
it's doing it
I'm
one
asking
connection
Sanjay
at a
to
time.
explain. But no, he is related to the CPS, right? So I understand what you're saying, right? So it's updating the connection on the standby
Yeah,
appliance, right?
in
So,
that
but this
table.
is not really the CPS. But Sanjay is making a connection, saying, okay, so this control plane sync performance is so critical, it's impacting the CPS. So I'm asking him to explain that.
Yeah, so let me this thing, right? So when we are doing the bulk sync, at the same time, we have the data path sync also going through, right?
Yeah.
So the data path sync itself, we have, before we insert the flow, before we complete inserting the flow, we have to send it to the standby. The standby has to insert the flow. And then only once that is done is when we say that, I mean, the flow is inserted even on the active. So that is what affects, I mean, that is the CPS, right? How fast we can do that.
That's a
Now,
DP sync, right? So that's not the control plane channel.
And it's an
but it
update.
is
That's
going
right.
to the same table. That's like Gerald was saying, it's going to the same table. So that is why we had all these messages where we said that there is a bunch of optimizations to be had in how we do the bulk sync too. We cannot do it in a blind way, right? Because the minute we start doing it in a blind way, there are multiple threads that, I mean, from our implementation, I'm thinking that it will be the same for other implementations too, right? Is you will have multiple threads and you will have locks on those threads because you are accessing the same. You can have slices, but you will still have locks and you will have some concurrency, this thing, right? So once you do that, if you just blindly sync over even for the bulk sync and hold up the table, your DP sync also will get held up, right? We are talking about 4 million CPS per second, right? It's not a small number. right?
Oh,
At this point in time,
no, I don't
you have very
understand
few
why.
cycles for you.
Sorry. Okay, so you're talking about the log, right? So, but I don't understand why you want to hold the log when your data is not ready, right? So, imagine for the control plan, we're not talking about the data plan sync. We're talking about the control plan. Let's make clear about that, right? So, for the control plan sync, so let's be clear on the scope, right? So our thinking is that why this metadata on the control plan channel cannot be standardized and has to be vendor specific. And you are saying this is because you need to do the translation and the translation impact the CPS, right? So that's what you're saying. So we want to
So there's
understand this one, right? So and then you are saying why it's impacting the CPS is because you are updating, you are holding the log, therefore you're blocking
It
the
is
data plan, right? So is that what your explanation is?
right. Whenever we are touching the flow, go on. It has. I think in our experience, it has been that the most efficient. We are trying to get to the most efficient because anything that we do, every bit and piece is affecting. I mean, it will affect the CPS. I think it will
Yeah,
be the
no, I get that part, right? So
right.
when you do the log, only log on the critical section. That's totally understood. But you know, that's not conflict with the standardizing the control plan metadata messages, right? So because you know you have standardized the metadata message, and then before you translate that standard metadata messages into the hardware specific message, don't hold the log, right? So because at that moment, you are not ready to insert to the hardware. Why do you hold the log at that point of time,
It's
right?
the
So
also there's another side to this, right? The data that we think itself is vendor specific data, isn't it? So it depends on how the tables are implemented, how the dash pipeline has been implemented in each vendor specific pipeline. So
no,
the
I totally
data
no,
that
no,
we are syncing is not the common data. It is
no,
the lookup results of each table and stuff like that,
no,
which is
sure.
very vendor specific.
No, sure. I think we definitely understand. There could be some optional data, right? So, but in terms of there must be some required data that is common for everybody, right? So, are you saying that any all the data is not common? It's all vendor specific?
so. Let me, for example, if you could go down to the data state synchronization itself, a little bit down. Yeah. State synchronization.
And just tell me where
No. Sorry. It's not. I should put some section numbers there. But a little high, this become a little lower, Kristen. If you can just look for, yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry. We have come a little lower. But if you could just look for state synchronization, search for state synchronization. Yeah, you come here. Right? So if you go down, we have listed out what needs to be synced.
Is this the
List
older
it out what
version?
needs to be synced? Okay.
Is this probably the older version? Maybe if you go to the
Okay.
PR and click on
Sure.
this thing, I
I'll
think.
go. Yeah, you keep talking, I'll find it.
Right. So if you see there, go on, for example, we are saying policy results from the security lookup, right? Or there is mapping and route lookup. All these are rewrite information. All these are very specific. These are very specific to the implementation today, right? We have to come up with some. Is there an abstract way of referring to this? Maybe we need to this thing.
Oh, actually, I disagree
Or you
with
could
that
do one thing.
statement. Sorry, I
Can you go to
disagree
the
with that
commits?
statement. Why the rewrite information is a vendor specific, right? So if you want to rewrite the IP is passed bound by the control plan. Okay, so here the IP I need to rewrite. Why is that the vendor specific information?
That's right, because the CAPA mapping, those addresses for the destination, what VNI or NCAP needs to be done at the end, all that is not proprietary, right?
But how you
That's
represent it and how we insert it, how we put it in could be, right?
Oh, that I
From
mean,
the,
I think we discussed that point, right? So, in the control messages, right? So first to make, those metadata to be common, right? So then when you try to insert to the hardware, if your hardware have a specific data structure, translate them, right? So
I think the point is
Yeah,
that this translation from common to vendor specific takes a penalty on performance.
total performance.
yeah, but
I would
that part
suggest,
I
Gohan.
don't understand, right? So I already raised my argument on that part. If the translation causes CPU, sure. But if the translation is blocking the CPS, why you put your log on a non-critical section?
Oh, okay. I agree.
Hmm.
I understand your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is
But
critical
also,
section. Go on, Mukesh.
yeah, no, I was just saying that, but also there is definitely going to be some vendor specific data. Not everything, it cannot be just common, open data alone.
Oh, sure. I mean, we
Right.
already asked that point, right? So, but we said, okay, let's define the common things first.
Yeah, so one thing, Gohan, I think one thing we should, this thing, right? These are not like 32 core x86 CPUs that we are running, right? These are our CPUs run almost at the edge when we are when we are at scale. So the data path CPUs are running almost to the limit, right? So in our this thing, even in our the TPU messages that we have to kind of, even for the this thing, we have to find out when CPU has, when a core has free cycles to take bulk sync messages to put in. That is the level at which it is at least our implementations are running to achieve this CPS length, right? So if I think at a high level, it looks fine to say that do not put a log, do everything, then get to a critical section. But when we are implementing it, we find that it is a problem, right? If you have to do any translation, any additional CPU load
I mean, tell me
on
some
the
specific
data path
translation
thing is
you
hard.
need to do, right? So sorry, tell me some specific translation you need to. What could be done for CAPM mapping? I mean, it's IP addresses. How would you translate them? It's a 32-bit, 128-bit, right? So what kind of translation you're going to do?
That I think
But we can also ask the other way question, right? Like, what is the point of doing that unless we also do it for the DPC? So unless we have the entire picture, there's no point in doing interoperability, right? So when we solve it, can't we solve it for both?
Oh,
whenever we solve it
okay.
for.
So
We should solve it for both. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that people are fully agree on that DP sync that maybe other people have a different to do the DP sync, right? So but on the CP sync we should align, right? So DP sync, I think because of the hardware limitation, maybe different people will have a different, even someone may not fully agree that all those policy need to be sync, right? So but they can still achieve some compatibility, but at least on the control channel we should fully in sync, right?
So but I think what Sanjay is saying is, in our view, it's the same, whatever limitation is there in DP sync, the same limitation
we use
exists
exactly
in CP sync as well.
No,
we
but
use the
DP
same
sync
code.
you are not using the CPU, but this ARM you are using the CPU, right? So
No, even DP sync also goes through the CPU. The initiation happens from this thing, but it goes through the CPU. Okay, I think this thing that I would suggest is, maybe I think we should start the initial. I am not sure. We will go back and see, but I don't think we will be able to. I think we have discussed this once before, right? And the general consensus with whoever was implementing this thing was, if we try to add and try to make it interop, it will not scale, right? We will not be able to get what we are able to do it, because we are. I think that we are, like I was saying, right? We are almost at adding any unnecessary computation on the CPUs will not on any of the cores is going to be detrimental. Is the boss to this thing.
But
That is
again,
one.
I think no. Again, I think on the bulk sync part, right? So it's on the median level, right? So I still don't understand why that part is so critical in terms of
Yeah,
basically you transfer those connection from one side to the other side. It takes a little bit more longer time, right? So
I agree
do
with
it.
that. That I think the use case here is important. That when you're doing a bulk sync, this is something that happens. Whether it happens in 30 seconds or 1 minute is not really. It's not like a real. It's a near real time thing. It's not a real time thing. So it's not. If it's taxing, then you just take a little bit longer to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's a big event. You're saying, oh, I had no device, now I have a new device. So it takes 30 seconds or a minute to sync up a real device. That's kind of a normal thing. So we shouldn't think of it as having the same onerous requirement of having to be super, super efficient because I want it to be 30 seconds opposed to 60 seconds. I mean, obviously we want smaller numbers, but it's not the same as the real-time sync where you're having to do things like is like instantly to get your CPS up. In this case, we're just trying to sync to another device to bring it up for the first time.
Okay, but this thing, practically, are we really thinking that we will have two different data paths syncing in the near future?
Well, that's not the issue here. Let's say I have the bigger issue for me. I have two vendors.
Hmm.
I now know that both vendors from a control side work the same. They look the same. We understand what it's doing. We understand the messages. We understand the flow charts. We understand everything that's going on, at least on that control side. It's not that we're going to mix the vendors. It's that we need to have a consistent operations that we can understand and rely on. And if we can get the control channel to be reliable, easily understood all the way around by all our engineers, even if we don't sync two different machines, I mean, that should be the goal. But I mean, if we don't do that, we get a lot out of that because our testing can be almost identical for bulk sync.
Yeah,
Which is,
I would completely echo, the Josh point. Think about it from the operational perspective, right? So think about it from the monitoring, the debugging perspective. You're saying, right? So even for the control message you are transferring between those two machines, there are some opaque data that we do not understand. When we say we do not understand, meaning the Sonic community do not understand. I think this could cause extremely, difficulties in terms of the debugging, the troubleshootings, and understand what state has been transferred from one machine to another machine, right? So, therefore, that's why, we think it's very critical and important to make sure those control messages have well-defined data structure, well-defined semantic, and then people can understand what message has been transferred. But if we're talking about the opaque data, for the control channel, I think, it's completely against the, those debuggability and, how we can operate the network, right? So because I'm pretty
I
sure
see.
there
Without
will
any
be
opaque,
issues, right?
without any opaque data, I don't know. I think even the DP sync messages between the data path, I think we need some opaque messaging, Gohan. I'm very worried if we say everything there is no opaque allowed at all on principle between the two. Given the current experience, I don't think it will be very hard to
I
implement. I
don't
think
think
it will be the same thing. Mm.
I don't think he said that ever. He said that let's work on the common parts. And then if there is opaque left in the control message, we can talk about that. But I think
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I
yeah,
heard Gohan say is let's work on the common parts, see how far we get. And if there's opaque left, let's discuss.
I
Let's
mean
not
that.
get too,
I see. Okay. I see. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we are on the continuum. We are on the same continuum. If you look at the messages itself, Gerald, there is the bulk sync message itself. All of it except for this metadata is open. Right? It's not like if we are just bulk syncing everything. That's not the proposal too. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah. Sorry. I mean, I think I completely. I mean, in the side, right? So obviously, we'll have vendor extensions, right? So we're not saying that, everything, you know, because we understand, right? So but I think like what Rashma said, those CAPA to mapping, right? So those rewrite information, it looks like it's not a vendor specific implementation. It's more like a control plan messages, that the SDN controller tells you, right? So
I see. Okay, I think we can. I think just to put in the bulk sync, we can put the rewrite information. I think whatever is listed there, right? I think we could. It's not this thing. We can leave leave some opaque field for anything else. We need to carry, and we can put this thing. We can do that one. What I'm saying is whatever that state synchronized, whatever is listed there, right? We'll just convert that to this thing which says policy result, which is a enum, and then mapping lookup result, which is the destination, and we can try to make that into this thing. But we will definitely need opaque data in the sync messages. Without that, it will be very hard.
I think on the opaque messages, what we could do is because opaque are usually proprietary. We can maybe work on the common pieces, and then we can have like a private meeting with any company who's trying to explain why they need the opaque, because they're obviously that's not a community thing. We can kind of take that offline and understand it a bit better.
Yeah.
Can I
absolutely.
ask what percentage of the data might be opaque, completely opaque?
I have to go look at to see what in each of these this thing that we sync today. I think we need to go look at it in detail to see, because we have not considered trying to make it into a right all the structures that this thing. The reason is I think there are implications, right? So the code path, the path that we follow, either for DP sync or for this thing, is very common, right? Except for the higher, one shim layer on top, it is very common. Now, if we have to do some conversion somewhere else, I think we need to go reevaluate. But we also have to look at the actual messages that we send to see. It'll be hard. Right now, it's harder to explain that, Rishma. How much percentage will be opaque? How much will be this?
Got it. No, I was just approximately. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. So Sanjay, as part of this HA proposal, should we not also define the message format as well? So that we know that, okay, where do things go, and then and also, of course, have a room for wherever basically the opaque or vendor specific information also goes.
That's there in the proposal below, Hanif. Did you in the gRPC channel? You see the flow sync message is defined, and then there is the metadata which is defined as bytes there. So that is the opaque section. Other than that, everything else is defined in the gRPC section.
Okay. So I think if this is where we are basically defining it.
Yeah, if you see or a little lower, Krishna, little bit lower. Yeah. So all the control plane messages were there in the. So we just passed that. If you look for
channels defined as streaming gRPC.
You have to go to 6 out of 6. Yeah.
The last.
Yeah, this one. Right.
Yeah. So in this, you'll see the flow sync message, which is defined. Just come down, Krishna, on the side.
Yeah.
Sync message. Yeah,
okay, I'll take a look at. I'll take.
It's there in that. It's there in that. The flow sync message is defined. I think we are only speaking about one portion of that flow sync message, which is the metadata. Everything else is defined. Hanif.
Okay,
Yeah.
so as we just discussed, then do we need to extend this one to carry the metadata and also to split this one to say, you know, how the metadata will have common field versus opaque data?
Yeah, I think we can do an attempt. Yeah, but this thing though, I think yeah. The implementation, whatever we are standing by this proposal to say that, okay, whatever was the goals that we wanted, we are able to achieve with this, right? If we try to cut it out into different things and force the implementation to actually convert from that abstract to this thing, while I understand that it is on the message, if you wanted to look at on the wire packets and see what was being transferred, instead of looking at the state on each of the nodes. It is kind of, it is nice to have, it is good to have this thing. But while we stand with whatever, I mean, we are trying to take what implementation we have with taking it as a working model, right, of where it is working and standing up to whatever is the required performance. If we make the changes to this thing, I think we will need to reevaluate to see whether we can get the same amount of performance if we make the change, or is it going to drop, right? Because like I was saying, it's a delicate balance that we have. We'll try to break it up anyway. As for the proposal, we can do it. But I think, Gerald, from performance, I think we will need to check and see if we, because even in our implementation,
yeah, but
we
remember
to
we
adapt to
said
this,
it's
right?
near real. It's near real time. It's not real time. You can take a little bit longer to do bulk sync.
Yeah.
You know, if it's going to affect your CPS, you say, well, I'm going to back it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the CPS would come into picture once the bulk sync is done, I think, maybe approximately. Yeah, it's mostly offline, I would think.
Not really, because it's happening in parallel, Strishma.
Okay.
It is, but
DP sync is happening.
You can throttle bulk sync. You can
Yeah,
say,
I
I
get
won't
it,
let
I
it
get
ever go beyond 5% of the total CPU.
Yeah,
You could do that.
Question about your data path sync versus the bulk sync. Is the metadata and the way you sync the flows, etc., is very similar?
Very
And
similar.
the content? I see.
Very similar.
Very similar. Okay, that's why.
The metadata is very similar. Yeah, the only thing is in the data path sync, the packet itself goes through along with the metadata. But
here you're streaming.
Yeah, so it's just the flow info and this thing which is going in batches, which doesn't happen in the DP data path sync because it's with per packet thing. But the handling is very, very similar. The metadata is exactly the same. The handling is very similar.
Okay.
So that gives some, that's what I was trying to define, keep it the same, because that gives us an advantage in terms of, because it's all the same. Cool. Yeah, I think, so what we agreed on is that state synchronization, whatever we have, we can try to move that into the 4 or 5 elements that we said that is needed to be synced. Agreed. I think we can move it to this thing, but we will have one vendor specific this thing too, portion too, along with the. Sounds fair.
Here's what we have right now.
Yeah.
And here's what's going to
Correct.
change, right?
That's going to remain the same. I think only this thing is these things will reflect in the message itself, Christine. So today, all these are covered by the metadata, one member in that flow sync message. We'll break it up into these 4 plus 1 opaque vendor extension. Yeah.
Will we need reviewers after you make these changes, Marian? Will you take a look?
Yeah, this should be a small, very contained change. I think the rest is should remain the same. It's just a very contained change in the gRPC section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to take notes at the same time. I'm just gonna add notes to our original high availability and scale document here, just to kind of capture what we're doing at the bottom.
Sure.
Johan, anything else for this call?
Oh, okay. So maybe the other question is like when we'll be able to review that. I think the site header needs some update, right? So because you will define those metadata messages. So when we'll be able to review that updater? Sorry, that site header update.
Sometime later this week. Go on. I'll try to get
Later.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's good. So let's review them, yeah, together. I think that
Yeah.
would be great.
But I think the rest, I think this will be that only in that flow sync message. Please review the rest. I think this will be that content change within that the definition itself, wherever the metadata. Yeah.
Now, everybody, OCP's next week, so I'm probably very likely going to cancel this meeting next week so everyone can do OCP, okay?
Oh, okay.
That sounds good, Christina. Yeah.
Are you sure? Is that cool with, Gohan, you're gonna be there, everyone's gonna be there?
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Cool. Thanks for offering to make those changes. Anything else for this call from the rest of the team? I feel like we've had
Go on, Arifan.
AM. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask. We're going to look at the ECMP, this thing too. I'm very curious on the PFT ECMP.
Overlay ECMP.
That I think maybe I don't know, like a Prince. When do you think you will be able to talk about that?
I can talk about that, but anyway, we don't have this meeting next week, right? So
The next week.
You want to do it the next week?
Next one.
yeah, next week we can do. I can do, yeah.
Okay, so let me look at my calendar. So not the 18th, but the 25th? Do it on the 25th, Prince?
Yeah, or yeah, if we want to call for another meeting, yeah, that's fine as well.
Okay, well, you guys let me know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Gerald, anything from your end? No? Oh, I think he dropped. Okay.
Cool.
So I feel like we've had AMD and on the hot seat quite a bit here. So thank you very much. Does anyone else want to talk about anything else other than AMD? Nope. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And you guys have a good week. And Sanjay, Vijay, I'll look for your changes to the documentation. And everyone, please review.
I'll either probably add it to the same PR.
Okay.
Or if you want, we can merge this PR so it's easier to read for everyone, which however we want to handle it.
So me merge the PR first and then you keep going?
That's one option. That's one option. I don't know. These documents, I find it easier to review when when it's there in the code base. But
yeah, I can do that. I can do that
Yeah.
today. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Christina.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.